Senator, as I'm coming in, the number one issue I'm concerned about is the readiness of the force. So if I'm confirmed, I'll work with the team to understand better your question, the particulars of decrements or plus-ups, whatever is required. But the litmus test must be, are we going to create an environment that encourages readiness? So, or are we taking away from that? If the answer is we're taking away from that, we have to relook. If the answer is we're going in the right direction, I'll reinforce that issue. So if confirmed, again, I commit that will be my driving force, and I hope that I can bring positive change to the military health system.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you on that. Like I said, I know you've been out for a while, so I don't expect you to have all the details ready at your fingertips. Maybe after you've been on the job, after confirmation, in 30 days, we can talk about where Manning stands at all the joint medical facilities, and especially at the Crown Jewel at Walter Reed up the road.
Senator, it would be my honor.
Another issue that I've heard some concerns about in recent years is the amount of time it takes to authorize military health care for all government employees who are experiencing symptoms from what's become called anomalous health incidents, also known as the Havana syndrome. This is not a question or concern about the source of so-called Havana syndrome symptoms or who may or may not be responsible for them. I know that's been in the media a lot lately. This is simply about those people who are experiencing these symptoms and making sure that they get timely care. Again, we were concerned enough about it on this committee that in the most recent NDAA, we directed the Secretary of Defense to provide timely access for an assessment subject to space availability at the National Intrepid Center or any other appropriate military medical treatment facility, and to furnish that care to all U.S. government employees and their family members who may experience these symptoms. If confirmed, can you ensure that government employees and their family members who experience anomalous health incident symptoms can get timely access to evaluation and treatment at a military hospital or at the National Intrepid Center?
Senator, I'll work with the other departments and agencies, and yes, I'll work hard to streamline the access to those that require them.
Thank you. I think it's really important. Obviously, these incidents are centered mostly around our embassies, where we do have uniformed service members as defense attachés or other positions, but Americans who are serving those positions, whether they're at state or another government agency, also need the benefit of the expertise I think that the military brings to bear. Mr. Lowman, question for you. I've recently introduced bipartisan legislation with Senator Kelly called the Reshore Act that would secure the supply chain for rare earth elements and several other critical minerals. It's recently come to my attention that the Defense Logistics Agency's National Defense Stockpile has been dangerously underfunded for years. I'm greatly concerned that we rely too heavily on Chinese processing facilities to refine the raw materials necessary for our systems. If confirmed, can you commit to me to making sure that the National Defense Stockpile's budget and authorization requests match the requirements that are set forth by law?
Senator, there will be no greater advocate in the department for the necessary materials and the resources needed, one, to sustain readiness, but two, to mitigate and build resiliency within our national defense supply chains. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to stress that, again, this is a solvable problem. The irony about rare earth elements is that they are anything but rare. You could probably go out on the National Mall and dig up most of them. What is rare is the actual mining and the manufacturing processing of it, which we've foolishly outsourced to China over recent decades, and that it's vital that we get that production out of China back into the United States and also encourage our partners to produce those minerals and refine them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Rono, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome and congratulations to all of our nominees. Normally, I start each nomination hearing with a series of questions related to a nominee's fitness for service. However, based on the severity of the ongoing water contamination crisis on Oahu, I'm going to submit those questions for the record. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Red Hill. It is a massive underground fuel storage facility consisting of 20 massive World War II tanks located 100 feet over Oahu's aquifer that holds 250 million gallons of fuel to support military operations across the Indo-Pacific. This storage facility has contaminated the Navy's water system, displacing almost 4,000 families since December. As a result, the state of Hawaii has directed the Navy to defuel the tanks. The Department of Defense estimates the cost of the crisis response alone to date is almost $500 million, and that does not include defueling the tanks or the cost of upgrades to do so safely. The Navy must immediately resolve the drinking water crisis, and the Department of Defense must develop a long-term plan for strategic fuel storage. The people of Hawaii deserve a resolution to the Red Hill crisis as quickly as possible, including a decision regarding the potential closing of Red Hill. The fastest way to do this is through the state of Hawaii's ongoing hearing to determine whether to provide or deny a permit to operate Red Hill. At the end of the day, the health and safety of the people of Hawaii and military members and their families is my top priority, a goal shared by the Secretary of Defense. A fundamental component of health and safety is access to clean drinking water, a goal we should all be focused on. Question for Mr. Storch. In November, I led the effort, along with my colleagues from the Hawaii delegation, in calling for the DoD Inspector General to start an independent investigation into Navy oversight and operation at the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. Even if the state of Hawaii declines to give Red Hill a permit, it is imperative that investigation continues. The people of Hawaii deserve answers about what happened in order to mend the distrust of the military that has resulted from this crisis. Mr. Storch, if confirmed, will you continue the current IG investigation into Red Hill with the urgency it deserves?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I am aware of the pendency of an evaluation. I'm not familiar with the current status of it, but if I'm confirmed, certainly I'll work with the team at the OIG to ensure that it's appropriately followed through on and any appropriate recommendations made, and those are followed through on as well. If I can, I would just mention with regard to Senator Gillibrand's question, I don't think I answered it very articulately, but it would essentially be the same answer that I'm not aware as the IG of NSA of the current status of pending evaluations at other offices, but if I'm confirmed, I'll make sure that we follow through as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowman, a long-term concern I know the military has with respect to Red Hill is the national security impact that defueling and shutting down the facility could have. I've spoken with Deputy Secretary Hicks several times about this concern. She has launched a thorough review of the facility's long-term future to include the option of permanently defueling Red Hill and is analyzing the distribution of fuel reserves for operations in the Pacific Theater. And you mentioned already in your testimony that you indicated the Indo-Pacific needs, which is, of course, a huge AOR, and the supplies that will be required, that includes fuel. So that's something that you've already acknowledged. The department needs a storage and logistics solution for the strategic fuel reserves, and this is an issue that will likely require extensive funds and direction from Congress. Mr. Lowman, if confirmed, you will be responsible for overseeing the fuel requirements for the department. Very briefly, how do you intend to approach this issue?
Senator, thank you. I'm aware of a couple of ongoing initiatives. One you referenced already, the DSD's sponsored study of the strategic positioning of petroleum supplies in the Indo-Pacific at echelon, and whether any changes in the positioning of that fuel can be made. The second one, ma'am, are establishing an end-to-end common operating picture of our petroleum supplies, using advanced data analytics and AI where appropriate so that we can better manage the flow, the consumption, and the overall transportation requirements. So if confirmed, I will work very closely with DLA, U.S. Transcom, the COCOMs, and the services to ensure that one, these initiatives have the appropriate oversight at the department, and two, that they remain resourced and on track for successful conclusion.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to Red Hill, it is highly likely that the state of Hawaii will not grant a permit for the continuing operations of Red Hill, and therefore we are going to need to address how we're going to meet the fueling needs of the Indo-Pacific AOR. I have some other questions that I'd like to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Rono. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to Senator Sullivan and respond.
Senator Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my friend Senator Tillis. Gentlemen, congratulations on your nomination. You know, as the chairman of this important committee knows, Alaska constitutes 3 pillars of America's military might. We are the cornerstone of missile defense for the whole nation. All the radar, ground-based missile interceptors are almost all in Alaska. We're the hub of air combat power. By the end of this year, we'll have over 100 fifth-generation fighters based in Alaska. No place on the planet Earth has 100 fifth-gen fighters in one location. And we're a platform for expeditionary forces to deploy anywhere in the world on a moment's notice. We're very close to a lot of the hot spots in Asia, much closer than any place in the United States, and even places much closer than places like Australia. A lot of people don't know that. So whether you've been to Alaska or not, I'd like to get a commitment from each of you early in your tenure to come up to Alaska, either with me or with your team, to see firsthand the critical importance of my state to the national security of our nation. Mr. Storch, why don't we just go down the line? The answer is yes.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to make sure my mic is on.
Real
Yes,
easy
I've never been to Alaska. I know it's an important place. I'd be honored to visit there and understand the issues, sir.
Right, so you're committing to come to Alaska?
Sure.
Yes, okay, great. Dr. Martinez-Lopez?
Sir, the answer is yes.
Great, thank you, good.
Senator, Alaska is critical and is positioned uniquely on the globe. So I commit to, one, coming to Alaska to better understand the unique environment and challenges that exist there. I want to work with the ASDA as well as my staff and the services to ensure that the sustainment capabilities in Alaska are up to the task to maintain readiness and ensure that combat power. So yes, I'll come visit.
Thank you. Mr. Beshar?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to follow up on Senator Hirono's talk about Red Hill. I was recently out in the Indo-PACOM AOR, and I will tell you, I mean, I don't have to, she's doing a great job, but this is a huge issue. And I certainly want to work with her in this committee. When we're talking about strategic location, Mr. Lowman, I'd actually like to get your commitment as you're looking at the really complex issues here, and they are complex, but it's logistics in the Indo-PACOM theater. One area that hasn't got a lot of a discussion on this, the U.S. Navy has been thinking strongly about warming up the very strategically located naval base, former naval base of Adak, Alaska. It's further west than Hawaii. It's way out in the Aleutian Island chain, but it's a big former base with massive fuel storage capabilities. I'm not sure it's the answer, but it's something that certainly should be looked at as this really complicated and difficult issue in Hawaii is being addressed. Can I get your commitment, Mr. Lowman, to just take a look at that as one potential part of the solution? As Senator Hirono mentioned, having the logistics and fueling capability in the Indo-PACOM region is enormously important, especially to our Navy fleet. This is one element of a potential solution that hasn't been looked at, and I think it should be looked at. Can I get your commitment to look at that?
Senator, I think all options in this case should be on the table. And so if confirmed, I'll work with Transcom, DLA, and the other OSD stakeholders to, one, expeditiously complete the review and the study and make the appropriate recommendations.
Great, thank you. And I do want to work with Senator Hirono on this as well. Mr. Storch and Mr. Beshar, one issue that I've been focused on, because I think it's been misreported, and to be perfectly honest, I think it's been a blight, unfortunately, from some members of this administration on the military force itself. is this issue on extremism. We don't want any extremist actions, actors in our military. Unfortunately, I think when Undersecretary Call came before this committee, he said that stamping out systemic racism in the ranks was one of his top priorities. I asked him, wow, that's a pretty broad statement. Do you have any data on that? He had no data, of course. The media wildly reports this as some kind of giant crisis in the military. We had a member here who actually said estimates are 10% of the force could be branded as extremists or racists. When the military actually did the study, finally, they found that less than 100 cases in a force of over 2 million were undertaking prohibited extremist activity. Now, look, we want zero, but that's 0.005% of the force. So can I get your commitment as you're looking at these issues to make sure that you're reminding people that, as Mr. Beshar said, these are the best and brightest in the country. And wild claims that the Washington Post and other media constantly throw out there, they're clueless, really besmirches the men and women in the force who do what less than 1% of people in our country do, which is raise their hand and volunteer to protect the Constitution and their fellow Americans. So, Mr. Storch, Mr. Beshar, can I get your commitment on that issue to make sure you're looking at it with the data, not with these wild claims? Undersecretary Call was no help on this. But it's a really important issue, and a lot of members are feeling kind of like these accusations are directed at them, which it's really outrageous. Can I get a comment from both of you on this?
Senator, as you're no doubt aware, the OIG is doing work in this area currently. I certainly can tell you that if I'm confirmed, I will ensure that we are following the facts wherever they are and reporting them out as appropriate. Absolutely.
Thank
Senator
you.
Sullivan, you have my commitment to study the issue closely with the type of balance that you've just articulated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Next, let's recognize Senator King via WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Starting with Dr. Martinez-Lopez, there is a epidemic within the military and within our military veteran community, and that is suicide. I call it a disease of despair. And we have taken various steps, but I hope that this attending to this matter and working on prevention, identification of high risks, how to intervene properly to prevent it will be one of your priorities, because this is literally killing both active duty military members and particularly veterans.
Senator, thank you very much for championing this cause. One suicide is too many. It's a daughter, it's a husband, brother, sister, and I've been at the receiving end as a physician where I've dealt with this, and it's devastating not only to the family, it's devastating to the whole force. So I come with energy to, if confirmed, to tackle this issue. We need to bring new eyes. I will bring eyes from academia, from other places. We need to bring about new technology, new ways of looking at ways to mitigate this. We need to look at expanding the mental health services in such a way that they hit the mark and really prevent this awful occurrence. So again, if confirmed, that I commit to really work hard initially on this issue, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This is not strictly related, but this is not a medical issue, but a software issue. We continue to have this frustrating problem of a lack of interoperability between the Department of Defense medical record system and the Veterans Administration. Will you give me a commitment to really dig into this? Because this is, as I say, this is software. This isn't, we're not trying to, cure all the world's diseases here. We're just trying to have two systems talk to one another. Please take this on also as a project.
Senator, the electronic health record is key to many of the new new ways to deliver healthcare, right? So it's not, it is a critical component to not only the service member, but the veteran. So we have, you've confirmed, you have my commitment that I'll work with the Department of VA to promote this and make sure that not only deploys in the Department of Defense, but lessons learned from the Department of Defense are transferred to the Department of Veteran Affairs, because we owe that to our service members, and we owe that to the veterans that so proudly serve.
It also relates back to the suicide issue. I've met with veterans and people working on this issue, and it appears that a significant percentage of the suicides take place in the first 2 or 3 years after separation from active duty. So again, this handoff should be seamless and not tangled up in software confusion in terms of conveyance of records. So I appreciate your attention to that. Mr. Lowman, in terms of readiness, one thing I would urge you to do is to benchmark our performance in the Department of Defense against the private sector, whether it's the private airlines, for example, in terms of readiness of their aircraft, commercial shipping compared with the Navy. One of my mottos is, does it work, and how do you know? And benchmarking is one way to achieve that kind of knowledge. I hope this is something that you'll focus upon in your work on readiness.
Thanks, Senator. This will be a priority for me if confirmed. One thing the department has spent quite a bit of time on over the last decade is the introduction of prognostics, things like condition-based maintenance plus, sensors, the ability to develop very precise and very finite data sets to understand where our readiness issues are. And so that ability, coupled with advanced data analytics, give us the ability to begin benchmarking to common platforms in the commercial sector and differentiate any deltas in performance given military, the uniqueness of military missions. However, if confirmed, I will work with my staff to continue the momentum in that area.
Well, I'm out of time. I'm going to submit a couple of questions for the record. One is ubiquitous 3D printing capability on our ships and at our bases, and also the issue of the allocation of KC-46s in terms of the aerial refueling capacity. I thank you all for your testimony. Congratulations on your nominations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, gentlemen, on your nominations. I may not be able to ask all of you questions, but you can leave the room knowing that you have my vote for confirmation. Mr. Storch, I want to start with you. Once you're confirmed, what would you do to investigate the planning, execution, and aftermath of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the DoD's role in it?
So the OIG has jurisdiction over all programs and operations of the department. And additionally, as I'm sure you're aware, it serves as the lead IG for Operation Freedom Sentinel. While I am not in a position to forecast any particular reviews or the like, if I am confirmed, I would look forward to meeting with the team at the OIG, to consulting with the Department of State and the USAID IGs, and also coordinating as appropriate with SIGAR, with the Special IG for Afghanistan Reconstruction, to determine what oversight would be appropriate. And I very much would welcome the opportunity to engage with the committee as to its thoughts in the area.
One of the things that I thank you for that answer. I was personally involved in August with trying to get families and SIV holders, U.S. citizens, out of Afghanistan. We were successful, but we only scratched the surface of the number of cases that my office is tracking. One of the things that became very apparent to me is that we were providing net incremental information to the State Department and to the DoD on SIV holders. I mean, literally capturing paperwork and documentation that you would have thought would have just been in the normal course of business, how we keep track of those who are working alongside of our service members in combat situations. So I think that needs attention. We need to systematize it. We've taken a little bit of a hit reputationally for how we've handled some of the SIV holders, how thousands of people are still in Afghanistan. So I think that I'd be very interested in understanding the system that is in place, and why on earth at 2:30 in the morning am I discussing the transmission of documents from unit commanders and pictures of SIV holders to an agency that you would have thought would have had some of that information readily available. I think it would have probably expedited some of their departures. So that's another area. And then finally, on an interagency perspective, I think I saw Will's kind of get sand in them with the interagency handoff. I don't know how that works because that swims outside of your lanes, but it seems like there has to be an analysis of the interagency interaction and how we can do a better job if, God forbid, we ever find ourselves in a situation like we did in Afghanistan last year. So thank you for that. Dr. Martinez, I know that you have been supportive of the Center for Regenerative Medicine, my friend Dr. Atala down at Wake Forest, that program in your past role. You've been supportive of it. Once you're confirmed, can I expect that you will continue to support that and other similar efforts in your new role?
Senator, the readiness of the force, medical, is critical to what we do. Part of that is bringing new solution sets to questions that we want to answer and questions we don't even know we need to ask. That's how research works. So if confirmed, I will continue the effort across this broad spectrum of research, medical research, to bring solution sets that our service members so deserve.
Well, I think what we're doing at Wake and across research institutions nationwide is very promising and something that I hope that we can continue to support and fund and encourage. I just want to echo what I want to take a slightly different tact on the electronic health record. I'm on the VA committee. We've been working on that implementation. We have to understand that that is still several years away before it's fully implemented within the VA. But I was glad to hear the Secretary of the VA is starting up a joint office with the DoD so that they can start tracking and making sure that we have that seamless transfer of data at the right time so that we can get to a more precise analysis of a service member once they transition, have the sorts of interventions and things that we need in place, and the medical record is going to be critically important. So do I have your commitment that you will be working with the VA to make sure that as they implement, we don't miss that opportunity to have that seamless transition and long-term cooperation so that these platforms continue to be interoperable?
Senator, yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Lowman, just very briefly, give me an idea of what you think about the current reforms that we've seen, acquisition reforms. This is an area where I spend a lot of time. I think that there's still gold on the floors for additional reforms and efficiencies there. Tell me a little bit about your perspective on the current reforms that have been implemented and go-forward strategy.
Senator, I think the reforms that have been implementing are helping. We've got some more work to do. I will tell you that in the product support manager's role and the early development of the sustainment strategies before you begin producing the end item is critical to containing life cycle cost. And so that'll be one, if confirmed as the ASDS, one of my focus areas will be to make sure that the product support managers have the appropriate authorities, they have the data analytic tools, and they are at the table developing, along with their acquisition brethren, developing the contract frameworks and the organic industrial-based strategies that will help to contain sustainment costs, but also produce the readiness the department needs.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of our nominees, and welcome to your families who are here or watching remotely. Mr. Lowman, you've been nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, and that means that for now you'll be overseeing the military's housing program for service members. Now, no one should have to live with black mold, leaking and collapsed roofs, or exposed electrical wires in their home. It is indefensible that that was the case for military families. A Department of Defense Inspector General report last year found that the department is dragging its feet on two major reforms that Congress passed to address these deplorable conditions, creating a public complaint database for tenants and a tenant's bill of right. 2 years in, and neither of these have been done. So, Mr. Lowman, I know these things take time to stand up, but will you make sure that a publicly available complaint database is created this year? 2022?
Senator, thank you. So I couldn't agree more that our service members deserve the right to live in housing that is safe, it is suitable, and it is healthy.
Good. Thank you. I just want a commitment here. Am I going to get this database in 2022?
Senator, the DSD just created a new position, an Assistant Secretary of Defense for the environment, energy, and installations. So that portfolio has been removed from the Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment portfolio. What I can commit to, if confirmed, is working with the ASD, EI&E, for a smooth and deliberate transition of resources, and as well as the policies and personnel to make sure that these
But you can't put your name behind getting this done? It's a database, a complaint database. This is not rocket science. And we're in year 3 of people who want to be able to tell you about things like rat infections and black mold. I would think that the military would want to know about this.
Senator, I agree. And I work very closely with the ASD, EI&E to make sure that organization makes progress on this.
Well, I would like to hear you make your commitment on this. And the same is true for a tenant's Bill of Rights. Is this also just a lateral pass to somebody else?
No, ma'am, I'll commit to my personal involvement in better understanding the issues
I
surrounding
appreciate the involvement. I want a commitment to get it done. We're in year 3. This is not hard.
Senator, I certainly understand your question. And if confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment, I will do everything in my authority to make sure that these 2 things get completed this year.
Well, I'm not doing great here, but I've got more requests, but I'll put those in my QFRs. Let me ask another line of questions here. Mr. Storch, you've been nominated to serve as the DoD Inspector General, which makes you the Pentagon's top watchdog. Your job, obviously, is going to be to shine a light on waste and misconduct and abuses of power, and also to tell us when officials or organizations are thwarting your investigations or trying to hide your findings from the public. And there are a lot of ways that might happen, but I want to talk to you about the one that's keeping me up at night right now. I'm becoming very concerned about how much the Pentagon is keeping from the public through pseudo-classification. That is, classifying something that doesn't need to be kept secret, classifying it just so that there's less public scrutiny. Mr. Storch, do you commit to notifying this committee if you believe that your work is being wrongfully restricted or pseudo-classified or over-classified?
Senator, this is an area in which I do have some experience, not necessarily with pseudo-classification, but when I came on board as the NSA IG, we weren't doing any public reporting at all at our office. As I say, we basically just had a page on the agency site, which didn't have any content. And we've worked hard to advance transparency in our oversight work there in the ways that I discussed in my opening statement, and worked very well with the agency to make sure that happens. And I've got to say, we've gotten good cooperation from agency leadership. So I'm going to work on that. I would work with the agency to make sure that it's done right. And if I have any problems, I absolutely wouldn't hesitate to come to the committee.
That's what I want to hear.
Yes,
you know, I want to give you an example of where this pseudo-classification hinders the oversight process. Numerous investigations by the press, by independent analysts, and by civil society watchdogs have shown that our investigations into civilian casualties are seriously flawed, and that is probably too kind a statement. It is a broken system. The DoD IG has looked into this as well, but many of the DoD IG's findings about these failures are completely redacted, not because they are classified, but because they are marked, quote, for official use only. I suspect that more oversight from DoD IG would help us fix this broken system, but it's not going to happen unless we enhance transparency significantly. So I appreciate your comments on this. I anticipate you're going to be a partner in getting this done. If you have problems, you're going to come talk to us, and we'll get it straightened out. We have a right to know. The public has a right to know. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all the nominees. Thank you for being here. Mr. Storch, let me start with you. The Special IG for Afghanistan, SIGAR, has provided invaluable reporting on Afghanistan reconstruction efforts and activities through audits, through inspections, through investigations, and in my view, an unyielding commitment to transparency. Now, that office, unfortunately, has not been well supported, I don't think, by this committee. In fact, various members have tried to shut it down multiple different times. Let me ask you this. In the aftermath of the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, it is my view it's more important than ever that SIGAR be able to perform its duties in an independent manner, and I underline and emphasize independent, without interference. So do I have your commitment to ensure that SIGAR is able to continue doing its work free from interference from anybody, including your office, if you are confirmed?
Senator Hawley, I'm not familiar with all the background you described, but I can tell you that I've spent my entire time in the IG community working with other IGs collaboratively to try to advance oversight. So whether that's with SIGAR or other IGs who might have interest in that very important space, I would anticipate working collaboratively as appropriate.
That's not quite the answer I'm looking for. I want a commitment from you that SIGAR will be able to do its work free from interference from your office if you're confirmed.
I don't believe any IG should interfere with the work of another IG, and certainly if I'm confirmed, I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I would do everything I could to ensure that we're working collaboratively and cooperatively as appropriate.
Okay, so that's a yes. You will not, if you're confirmed, you will not in any way interfere or undermine the independence of SIGAR, who does not report to you under current.
I'm sorry. That's what I'm trying to get at, is they don't report to me, so I don't have any jurisdiction over them.
Good.
But I certainly
You won't try to absorb them. You won't try to take away their.
I'm not familiar with any issues like that, Senator, about jurisdiction. So my understanding is.
Well, I'm not asking if you're familiar or not. I'm asking you what your intentions are, and what I would like to hear and would hope to hear. This should be an easy question. Is that you will not interfere with SIGAR in any way. You will let them continue to be independent. You will not engage in any mission creep from your office that would seek to undermine SIGAR's independence and authority. Can you say yes to that?
I certainly would not do anything, yes, that would interfere with the independence and operations of another IG. When you talk about mission creep, I just want to be completely clear. There are many times in the IG community are issues regarding who's going to work on what, right? And so what I'm committing to you to do is that if there are such issues, I would work with the other IG, with my team and with their team, to determine what the right result is. So I'm not in a position to give you any more specific answer, but that's the way I've always worked in the IG community, and if I'm confirmed, it's the way I will work.
Let me ask you this. Do I have your commitment to support this committee's efforts and others' efforts to fully investigate DOD's role in the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, including by, this is the important part, conducting your own investigation, sharing data, and any other relevant measures? Would you commit to working with us?
So I would be pleased to work with the committee to identify any and all areas for appropriate oversight, and certainly will report robustly to the committee regarding the results of that. I can't, and I'm not in the position to identify particular areas at this time, but both in our role as the lead IG for OFS, and generally with jurisdiction over all programs and department operations of the department, we would examine any appropriate issues.
Let's come back to SIGAR for a second. SIGAR has long reported that DOD has overclassified information regarding the Afghan forces' performance and other aspects of the Afghanistan reconstruction effort, including limiting SIGAR's ability to provide the American people with a full account because of this. Do you share SIGAR's concerns about overclassification related to the Afghanistan reconstruction effort? And now that effort has ended, would you support efforts to declassify as much of that information as possible?
So I'm not familiar with specific concerns in that area. I will tell you as a general matter, I have worked very hard to promote transparency and to do everything I can to fight overclassification. I don't think things should be marked E for embarrassing or anything like that. As I said, we've gotten good support at NSA and our oversight work there. And if I'm confirmed, I'm going to keep working to promote transparency.
So when it comes to SIGAR's specific concerns about overclassification over a period of years and decades, you're not familiar with that? You don't have a view on that?
No, and nor do I believe it would be appropriate for me to express one. I haven't been confirmed. But if I'm confirmed, I certainly will look into the issue, and I'll commit to you that we'll do the right thing on it. And happy to engage with you on any specific issues.
Well, are you concerned, when you say you don't think it would be appropriate to express a view, I mean, are you willing to express a view on the dangers of overclassification? I mean, here's what I'm getting at. I've heard multiple members of this committee since the fall of Afghanistan say that it's unbelievable that we didn't know that the Afghan security forces were so badly prepared. I mean, who could have thought that they would have collapsed in the fashion they did? I tell you who could have thought it, Cigar. Why? Because they issued report after report saying that the Afghan security forces weren't appropriately trained, that they weren't prepared, that the Pentagon was making it difficult for Cigar to get any information, that DOD kept changing the metrics by which to assess the readiness of the Afghan security forces. Cigar has warned for years that what would happen in Afghanistan is exactly what did happen. So I think it's important that that entity be able to get the information it needs and actually report to the American people. Because frankly, I think the American people were pretty much lied to for years by multiple administrations, unfortunately, multiple administrations of both parties, unfortunately. So I'm pretty concerned about this issue. And what I'd like to hear from you is a commitment to say that you think that overclassification is a real problem, that you're going to work with Cigar to make sure that they can get the classified material that they need, and that ultimately we make as much of this material as possible to the American public, available to the American public. Can you commit to that?
Senator, I am committed to doing everything I can in my current job, and if I'm confirmed in a future job as the DOD IG, to fighting overclassification and ensuring that all appropriate information is out. What I was trying to say respectfully is I don't have the information currently as the NSA IG regarding the nature of information at DOD IG or Cigar. But what I can tell you is if I'm confirmed, I will do everything appropriate to fight overclassification and ensure that appropriate information is made public.
My time's expired. I'll have some additional questions for the record for the rest of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Now let me recognize via WebEx Senator Manchin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your willingness to serve. Let me start with Mr. Storch. Mr. Storch, the Office of Department of Defense Inspector General has consistently reported on problems DOD has in protecting its cyber system, its networks, and the data. Coming from the National Security Agency, I know you're very aware of how important cybersecurity protection is. So if confirmed, what would be your plan for assessing and reporting on the effectiveness, controls and processes being implemented by DOD intelligence community agencies to protect our classified systems from insider and external threats?
Senator, as you say, I've been very involved in doing oversight regarding cyber issues as the NSA IG and also in my role as the vice chair of the SIGI Tech Committee, where we recently started a cyber working group in which my folks are very actively participating. These are significant issues across the entire government, and if I am confirmed, I would look forward to working with the team at DOD IG to identify the areas of greatest risk in the cyberspace and ensuring that we're doing robust oversight over it. At NSA, we have an active cyber and IT group within our audit division that does that sort of work. And if I am the IG at DOD, I'll look forward to continuing that.
Mr. Lowman, we need to ensure our military installations are able to carry out the critical missions, even in the event of interruptions to the commercial power grid, off-post water supplies, or other challenges surrounding land, water, and airspace, whether it comes from bad actors or just extreme weather. So if confirmed, how will you make this a priority in your portfolio? And have you already evaluated, or have you all been looking at that?
Senator, thank you. So our installations play a critical role in projecting power, regardless on where that's required. So energy independence on our installation and building resilience on those installations to include alternative energy is critically important. That includes, of course, water. I understand, Senator, that the Deputy Secretary of Defense published a memo yesterday creating, because of the importance of this portfolio, a separate Assistant Secretary of Defense for energy installations and the environment. If confirmed, I'll work very closely to ensure a deliberate transition of personnel, resources, and policies needed to achieve these energy independent goals.
Thank you. Mr. Lowman, back to you again. As the military focuses on the great power competition, we're going to need to understand that a future conflict may be fought in an environment where access to our logistic networks would be contested. Unlike the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that we will not be able to necessarily count upon a reliable, constant flow of supply from the United States. We kind of saw hints of this predicament during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Their landlocked nature and our poor net relations with the neighbors complicated our efforts to retrograde personnel and material. So the brunt of the retrograde was kind of borne by a limited number of strategic lift assets, such as our 130, C-130s, and C-17s, completing multiple 3,000-mile round trips between Kuwait and Afghanistan. So what will you do as Assistant Secretary of Defense to ensure the resilience of our global logistic networks and prepare the whole force to sustain and fight and win in a contested environment?
Senator, thanks for that question. As you know, global operations require a global supply chain. And so this includes not only posture at echelon, where we position those supplies, but it also includes the sustained readiness of our inter and intra-theater lift capabilities, represented by C-130, C-17, and others, but also our sea lift capabilities. And so if confirmed, I'll work with the military departments, the ASDS staff, to, one, ensure the necessary resources are allocated and balanced with the modernization programs to sustain readiness of those current capabilities. But in the sea lift fleet, work with the Navy and Transcom to understand the recapitalization strategy, ensure that we are balancing the buy new versus recapitalization by used. And then finally, Senator, would work very closely with the services and ASD acquisition to ensure that we are balancing the service modernization strategies and we're appropriately allocating the necessary resources to sustain readiness of our current fleets.
Thank you. Appreciate so much all y'all's input, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Manchin. Let me recognize Senator Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to each of you, congratulations on your nomination. It's good to see all of you here before us. Mr. Storch, I'm chairman of Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and I've been a long advocate for reforms to safeguard the integrity of the Inspector General. The role is absolutely critical for us to maintain integrity in the government, and the independence of IGs is particularly important. And so certainly I hope, if confirmed, I will continue to count on your support for that work. But could you give this committee some indication as to how you approach the job as IG, particularly as it relates to the independence necessary to perform the job effectively and professionally?
Absolutely, Senator. I think that's one of the most critical aspects about our IG system is that IGs are able to independently exercise oversight, and that's what I think gives our work credibility and makes it authoritative. And critical to that are a couple things. One is, I think, maintaining the appropriate posture vis-a-vis the agency and its leadership. It's sort of, you don't want to be too close and you don't want to be too far away. You want to be close enough so you're getting the information so they understand you're going to be an honest broker, you're going to look at the information and report things out that'll help the agency to improve its operations. But on the other hand, you don't want to get too close and be captured by the mission, particularly places with compelling mission. And so that's really critical. I think it's something I watched IG Horowitz do at Justice extraordinarily well and tried to learn from him. And as I've tried to do that at NSA, and if I'm confirmed, I'll do that at DOD. The final thing I'll say quickly is I think the dual reporting and the relationship with the Hill is critical to maintaining that independence so that the agency understands that we not only keep the agency fully and timely informed, but we also keep the Congress fully and timely informed. And maintaining both of those lines of communication is critical to ensuring the independence that we need.
You know, I'm also very committed to ensuring that whistleblowers are protected. They play an incredibly valuable role for us to identify potential waste, fraud, and abuse all across all levels of the federal government. But a 2019 GAO report found that the Department of Defense IG and the military service IGs did not meet timeliness and quality goals for handling whistleblower complaints. So my question to you, sir, is if confirmed, will you commit to making whistleblower protection a top priority in your office and implementing the GAO's recommendations as soon as possible if confirmed?
Senator, if I'm confirmed, whistleblowers and their rights and protections will be amongst my very highest priorities. It always has been, and it always will be. As you say, they're critical to our system. I'll also examine the results of the GAO report and make sure, if they're not implemented, that we're implementing any necessary measures to not only meet, but to exceed and ensure we're doing everything we can in that area.
Very well, thank you. Mr. Lowman, the recent tensions with Russia have certainly reminded our country how critical it is to ensure cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, especially energy-related infrastructure. If confirmed, your office will clearly play a significant role in reducing cyber risk to ensure that we can maintain reliable power for critical defense missions. So I would like you to tell the committee how you believe the Department of Defense should approach ensuring cybersecurity for Department of Defense energy systems.
Senator, let me first start by commending the members of this committee and the Congress for your interest in this area. A couple of years ago, the Congress passed Section 1647 and 1650, which required the department to develop a process to routinely assess vulnerabilities, not only in our weapon system platforms, but also in our installation control systems. So speaking from experience, in my last job as performing the duties of Undersecretary of the Army has taken this challenge on. And if confirmed, I will work very closely with the other services and my staff to ensure that the necessary resources, policy, and processes are in place such that the services can routinely scan their installation control systems, identify those vulnerabilities, and then rapidly address the vulnerabilities and mitigate them.
Very good. Mr. Lowman, the pandemic also demonstrated how vulnerable our supply chains are to global disruptions and the drawback to the fact that we've offshored too much of critical manufacturing and other sources of supplies. This was especially apparent at the beginning of the pandemic when we struggled to get PPE equipment in the hands of first responders all across the country and other frontline workers. So much of that production had moved to China. So my question to you is, if confirmed, how will your office work with the department and with private sector partners to shore up our supply chains that are absolutely critical to national defense, certainly things such as PPE, but also pharmaceuticals and other industrial supplies that are important not just for the Department of Defense, but for the civilian sector as well?
Senator, resilient supply chains, especially in the national defense arena, are critical to our ability to prosecute global operations. So if confirmed, I'll work with the interagency community to develop the policy necessary to promote domestic competition, but also work with our commercial partners and the services to build resiliency in our domestic commercial supply chains, as well as increase capacity. In some cases, this will necessitate onshoring capability back into the nation.
Good. Well, if confirmed, I look forward to working with you on that critical issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. I would now like to recognize via WebEx Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to congratulate all of the participants today on your nominations. I'd also like to thank Mr. Lowman for our call last week. A combat credible logistics backbone is crucial to deterring our adversaries, and I appreciated our discussion on how to strengthen and mature this capability. I would like to start off with the balance between modernization and maintaining readiness rates of our current assets. Our military remains reliant on 1980s and in some places 1970s technology. A 2020 GAO report reviewed annual readiness rates for 46 different aircraft from 2011 to 2019, and only 3 of these aircraft hit their annual readiness goals for all 9 years, and 24 of them did not meet their goal in any of the years covered. This is types of aircraft, not individual aircraft. Yet we must also remain ready today to mobilize and respond to a global crisis, which we are seeing play out now with our need to transport thousands of troops to the European theater. While I understand that there's an art to balancing current mission readiness needs with modernization, I am concerned that the department does not have a strong glide slope and transition plan for key mobility and logistical assets in particular. Mr. Lowman, if confirmed, how will you work with the program offices, services, and combatant commands to build strong transition plans that roll out much needed modernized assets without divesting of legacy platforms so quickly that we create a near-term capacity gap that endangers mission accomplishment?
Senator, thank you for that question. So it's really a balance, as you rightly note, between modernization and sustainment, and the need to appropriately allocate the resources to sustain our current capabilities, especially in the inter and intra-theater lift, as you noted, but also to modernize those fleets in a sustainable fashion over time. The second balance, Senator, that you didn't mention, but I think is important to note here, is the balance across the active and reserve components to make sure that the resources the reserve components need to sustain their fleets and that they have the sufficient lift capability built into the COCOM logistics plans, so that the department not only sustains the lift capability that they need, but also modernizes it over time.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up the reserve forces. I hope that we're not going to be modernizing, for example, active duty Air Force at the expense of the Air National Guard in particular. I do want to move on to another issue, another source of our readiness issues. In that same 2020 GAO report, it was noted that in addition to aging aircraft, a noteworthy factor in our low readiness rates is lack of parts. I am interested in opportunities to collaborate with commercial industry to reduce the wait times and the cost of parts. One approach is to take advantage of used serviceable material from the commercial derivative aircraft. Under this program, the FAA provides the Department of Defense certified overhaul parts from 737 and 767 aircraft at a reduced cost. Initial estimates put material savings over the next 7 years at around $1.5 billion. Not insignificant. This program also reduces supply chain lead times. The program already exists within the DoD, but it is not standardized across all programs and services. And I've seen reports where purchasing officers have a program F function on their keyboard, F7, where they just hit a function and it populates a form and they can buy brand new parts, but it is multi-steps to use this program that exists for used parts. Mr. Lowman, if confirmed, what will you do to require or incentivize program offices and services to take advantage of proven programs like used serviceable materials? And are there any barriers to this collaboration that Congress can work to remove to encourage its use?
Senator, so part of addressing supply chain risk and building resilience is identifying alternative sources of supply. And so the USM program, as you accurately note, is used by industry today. And in some components, I'm aware it's used within the Department of Defense. If confirmed, I'll work closely with the services and the ASDF staff to make sure there are no policy barriers to use of the USM. And I would work with the interagency community, in particular the FAA, to make sure that the necessary airworthiness documentation is available to guarantee the life of the part, the repair history, for example, the hours currently consumed by that particular part. So I look forward to taking this on.
Wonderful. I don't think the pacing item here is the lack of documentation on the serviceable life of the parts. I think it is resistance within DoD and program offices and the services to using the program and using these parts, because it's just easier to buy new every time. But I'm happy to work with you on this and look forward to it.
Thank you,
I have 2 additional questions I will submit for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Now, via WebEx, I would like to recognize Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Chairman Reed, and of course, Ranking Member Inhofe for holding this hearing. And I want to thank all the nominees for your testimony today and really for your willingness to serve and all the service that you have given already to this country. And I want to talk a little bit today about affordable housing for service members. So Mr. Storch, last year's NDAA included one of my provisions to hold the Pentagon accountable for not yet utilizing existing authorities to support our most junior service members when transitioning off base to private housing. The provision requires the Secretary of Defense to brief Congress on DOD's plan to provide partial dislocation allowance payments to junior enlisted troops who are forced out of military provided housing due to shortages, and they have to incur moving costs and the like before they're eligible to receive their basic allowance for housing, the BAH. So, Mr. Storch, if confirmed, can we count on you to hold the Pentagon accountable for developing and executing a plan to provide our most junior service members with the dislocation allowance they earn as they're authorized to do under existing law? I have heard this time and time again at Nellis and Creech as I do roundtables with young enlisted members, service members. This is one of the number one things that they're concerned about.
Thank you, Senator. I'm aware that housing is one of the top management challenges that was identified by the DOD and its DOD IG in its recent assessment of the top challenges. And if confirmed, I would work with the team at the OIG to assess the issues that you've identified and do all appropriate oversight to make sure that the agency is following the law and providing the housing that service members deserve.
Thank you. I sure appreciate that. I want to move on to something else I've been hearing about, which is maternal health for our service members and their families. So Dr. Martinez-Lopez, Dallas Air Force Base, of course, in Nevada, offers some of the most robust maternity care services compared to military installations across the nation. But because some installations can't provide that wide array of maternity services that we offer at Nellis, TRICARE enrollees often pursue such services through a community provider. So Dr. Martinez-Lopez, improvements can we make to maternity care services offered to TRICARE enrollees, and how would you approach that if confirmed? And do you believe that you have the existing authorities to allow the department to make such improvements?
Senator, the health of all service members and family members entrusted to us is a reason of the military health care system. Said that, maternal health for both service members and family members has to be of the most importance. And we have to make sure that the quality of the care and the quality of the service, how do we deliver that, is right on target. So if I'm confirmed, I commit to work with my team and look at ways that we can bring parity, so in such a way that service members and family members can rest assured that they will get the best care either inside the medical treatment facility or outside in the TRICARE, service area.
So if confirmed, would you consider conducting a DOD-wide satisfaction survey for service members who have either recently or currently receiving maternity care through TRICARE? That might help guide us into some of the things that we have to do. Will you commit to working on that with me, please?
Senator, getting feedback from the people we serve, that's critical. So if I'm confirmed, I'll work with you, and not only to get feedback regarding maternal health care, but we need to get feedback regarding all health care we deliver inside and outside. So yes, ma'am.
And I'm just going to build on that a little bit because with military retirees, because we want to be sure they have full and equal access to the health care that they have, they've really earned over the course of their service. There's about 30,000 military retirees in my state. Unfortunately, our retirees, they just face anxiety of the potential rollback of these health services available to them. And right now, the Defense Health Agencies, their current plan is to right-size the military health system, moving 200,000 TRICARE beneficiaries to private medical networks, closing much of the Department of Defense military treatment facilities. So what steps will you take to be sure that our military retirees have the full access to the quality health care that they deserve and have earned?
Senator, I'm one of those retirees. So, first and foremost, the important thing is that we keep readiness. So that's the reason why we have a military health system. Said that, we also have to honor what we told the the service members, family members, and retirees that we were going to do, care for them. So as we finish transformation, which is probably, it is one of my priorities, finish the intent of the Congress and the execution of the military health system transformation, I will never lose sight of the fact that we need to honor that. So as we transfer care to the civilian, to the TRICARE network, I personally need to make sure that those retirees and service members and family members are cared for. And if not, how can we close that gap? We cannot disengage just to disengage. We owe them better. And if I'm confirmed, I'll work really hard to honor that commitment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. I want to follow up on Senator Duckworth's questioning about parts, but specifically with a connection to Arizona. Mr. Lowman, the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, AMARG, located at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, is a major component of our organic industrial base, commonly referred to as the boneyard. The 309th provides not just storage and preservation, but aerospace depot maintenance and modifications, as well as aircraft regeneration. It also provides some spare parts for the fleet. A few years ago, the 309th was able to regenerate a B-52 that has been in the boneyard for nearly 10 years and return it to service after the Air Force lost one of its bombers, a truly remarkable fleet. In the 90s, I dropped off a A6 Intruder at the boneyard, but that's been now 25, maybe over 25 years ago. I'm not so sure that one's coming back. But the 309th is also able to salvage parts to contribute to important research and innovation work within our military, including modernizing the B-52 fleet and as a supply of parts when we can't find one. This capability it's a capability that we have to continue and needs to be preserved. So if confirmed, how will you work with this committee to ensure that our nation's organic industrial base is properly resourced?
Thank you, Senator. Senator, you rightly note that the organic industrial base is a critical component of the overall defense industrial base in this nation, and AMARG is a great example of a capability resident within that organic industrial base to not only regenerate capability, but also to provide long-term storage, repair capability, and in some cases, parts reclamation. I can tell you in the late 80s, as a young Marine stationed at Yuma, I spent a little bit of time up at Davis-Monthan recovering parts for an A4 Skyhawk, also long out of service. So, Senator, if confirmed, I'll work with the services, I'll work with my staff and this committee to make sure that the organic industrial base capabilities resident within all the services are modernized and capable of continuing sustainment of our fleets as we modernize those fleets. That includes training personnel, that includes new plant and equipment to sustain these new capabilities such as directed energy, hypersonics, fifth-generation fighters, onward and so forth. So this is a priority for me.
Thank you, Mr. Lowman. I look forward to working with you and your team. Dr. Martinez, last year, I introduced bipartisan legislation aimed at bringing TRICARE plans in line with private insurance plans. The Healthcare Fairness for Military Families Act would allow the children of service members to stay on their parents' health insurance, TRICARE, until they're 26 years old. I remain very concerned about the fact that military families don't have the same health care coverage that other Americans enjoy, and the disparity is even more troubling as we continue to battle this pandemic and its detrimental impact on health and employment. I believe this common sense proposal will help countless military families as we come out of this pandemic, and it'll help our economy recover, which is why I push for it to be included in the NDAA. What are your thoughts on expanding TRICARE coverage to military dependents until the age of 26?
Senator, I think, the healthcare of our servicemen and family members is critical. So if I get confirmed, I'm going to be looking at ways to bring parity, healthcare parity. So we should be offering, insurance coverage just like the rest of America is seeing. So I commit to work with my team to try to close the gap and maybe have to come back and get some help. But you get my commitment that I'll strive for that healthcare parity.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. It just seems like also as just a fundamental question of fairness, dependents of members of the military get the same treatment as folks in the civilian world. So thank you, and I have another question for you I'm going to submit for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony today. Thank you for your distinguished public service and your commitment to serve again. And with that, let me call this hearing adjourned.